Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Nightsaber Z42, and today we're going to be taking a look at some maybe campaign ideas, short adventure ideas, maybe even one-shot ideas, but based on books that you may have read. Now, just a quick mention, the goal of this project is not to copy and paste characters or, places and things like that to make a campaign, but rather to take the ideas and themes of those borrowed materials and use them as inspiration. Also, the order that I present these books are not in any order, just the way that I happen to think of them as I was writing the script. First is a book called A Memory of called Empire by Arkady Martine. This book is a sci-fi book, and basically I would equate this to being a political intrigue type of a campaign or one-shot idea. The whole premise of this is that there's a race of people that basically pass on their memories from generation to generation with like some sort of a chip inside of their brain. And there's another faction that kind of wants that, like the emperor of another faction wants that. And said faction is also very much Aztecian. It's like what the Aztecs would be if they were in space in the future. Very interesting idea. I probably would use Traveler for this. Just something a little bit more low-key that can really make use of social interactions and things like that. Next, we have The Adventurers Guild by Zack, Loran, Clark, and Nick Eliopulos. This I would most certainly use for any fantasy game, maybe old school essentials. 5th edition, maybe. I kind of really see this being this to be more hard for my players instead of more heroic. But this is very much I guess I would call this a children's book. And the thing that I got out of this series, it's a 3-book series, but what I got out of this was the actual world building. These guys have played Dungeons & Dragons for quite a long time, and this is their brainchild, essentially. And in this world, there is a city that mainly humans live in. I believe there are some elves and other dwarves type people that also live in there as well, but everything else on the land is just covered by this mist. And in that mist are these horrifying monsters. So travel to other places is pretty much non-existent. And if there are other people in other towns or cities out there, they don't really know. Or at least not until the second book. And so I really like that whole setting. It really reminds me of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, where you have a hub that's sort of safe, although you can introduce some political intrigue in that as well, as they do in this book. But adventuring out there is where you're going to get the bulk of the meat. And I think that could be really fun. Just exploration in a very dangerous land where, your players can probably die. Toss in some monsters that they probably don't expect, maybe even tweak them up a little bit, and yeah, you could have some real fun with that. This can be a whole campaign in of itself. Next is a series called The Song of the Shattered Sands by Beaulieu. This one it's definitely inspired by 1001 Tales or Arabian Nights and stuff like that. I actually like this setting and world building of this book as well. You have a set kingdom, a city that's probably more of a metropolis in a way, and there are 12 kings. I believe there are 12, and they are immortal. And the main character of this book really wants to kill them for some reason. And so this could definitely be a setting where you have immortal kings, but you also have like a rebellion that is trying to overthrow them or, kill them. And so it could be a really big mystery of how to kill them. And you can play around with like boss mechanics stuff with a game like this. I would probably use 5th edition for this one, especially since it's fantasy. I would like to see this one be more of a heroic fantasy, so that's why 5th edition works perfectly. Next up is anything by Andy Weir, although my favorite one was Hail Mary. So this one I would use Mothership for, and I would probably introduce some more sci-fi horror. So in Project Mary or Hail Mary, the protagonist is sent off to another galaxy. And it's all about scientific exploration, and he meets an alien. So I would actually write this for Mothership with the intent that my players are going somewhere where they know that they might not return, or at least have a low success chance of returning from. And maybe I would also make one of the player characters into like some sort of a mimic. So it's like maybe one player against the others, or maybe even that player doesn't even know that he's a mimic until much later on in the adventure. So that's how I would use it for Project Hail Mary. Andy Weir has also written The Martian, so maybe a group of survivors living off on a Martian landscape. You could introduce some alien monsters in that and have a whole run of it. Another one was Artemis, I believe, where problems happen on the moon. And, you know, I could also see that being more sci-fi horror, introducing some aliens, maybe an alien invasion where nobody knows what's going on and stuff like that, and the players have to either escape or figure out what's going on. I would use Mothership for that as well. Next one is a bit of an old classic, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. But I would challenge you to do something a little bit different. So we already know about hobbits and the grand quest that these characters went on to destroy the One Ring, but I would challenge you to kind of make it not high fantasy like Tolkien did. I would use sci-fi, maybe cyberpunk, even steampunk in a way. So instead of taking the One Ring to Mordor, maybe the characters are tasked with uploading a virus to some sort of a mega corporation, mega tower, and, you know, disrupting the whole corporation, and, you know, saving the lower class people or something like that. That's kind of how I would change it, The Lord of the Rings, for different genres, and I think it could also work with steampunk in a way. Next, I have Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Hyperion has a very interesting world setting for it. Imagine that the galaxy has, for better or worse, been mapped out, and travel between the different worlds across the universe is instantaneous because you have portals that go from one place to another. And so maybe there's a hub world where all of these places kind of congregate, and you're like having adventures inside of like this mega city or something like that. So you could take your sci-fi game and tweak it up a little bit, and, you know, now everything is connected, or maybe there's some sort of a terrorist group that wants to like get rid of all of the portals and stuff like that. And so your players are tasked with finding out and stopping that menace before it actually comes to fruition. For this one, I would probably use Traveler, maybe even Star Wars, tweak it up a little bit, you know, maybe it's far into the future in the Star Wars universe, or you could even just take the concept and use the Genesis system and have your way with that. But I would probably more likely use Traveler for this type of a game. Last but not least, I would like to bring Rick Riordan to the board. Anything by Rick Riordan, basically. Like, he's written the whole Percy Jackson series, and so you could basically make your own Camp Half-Blood. I would use City of Mist would be a good contender, because City of Mist does this really cool thing where the heroes take on aspects of like folk legends. So I would tweak that setting a little bit, take the mechanics of City of Mist and use it for something like this, where your characters are demigods and now they have the powers of, you know, their half parent, or, you know, one of their parents and stuff like that. And so that's how I would kind of tweak that whole setting around for a game that it has a definite setting. And City of Mist really does have a definite setting. There's not too much that you could really do with it other than what is described in the book. So those are my ideas. 7 different books that can be turned into one-shots or short adventures, or even extended into full-length campaigns. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, or even suggest your own books down there as well. Feel free to give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and subscribe if you would like to see more. I will see you guys in the next video.